Today we have a very interesting topic,
Yes.
narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
In psychotherapy, they say every successful narcissist
Mm-hmm.
sends four people to therapy, two from their home and two from their office. And every unsuccessful narcissist ends up in therapy. And if he is a fragile narcissist, which most of them are, he ejects out of therapy without completing therapy.
Absolutely.
And this ejecting out goes as high as some of the founders of schools of psychoanalysis.
Yes.
Take, for example, Lacan himself.
Mm-hmm.
He himself announced that his therapy is over. So, the topic of narcissism is very interesting.
Yes.
And like every other topic, by and large, which we see, Freud started it.
Mm-hmm.
Like every word in psychoanalysis, the
Mm-hmm.
history of the word narcissism is a very interesting history.
Mm-hmm.
And this is reflected in most of the words in psychoanalysis.
Mm-hmm.
That first, people say this is the pathology denoted by this word. These are the symptoms of pathology. After some time, they say,
Let me leave from your mobile. I'm connected to laptop.
right.
Sorry for this. Mhm.
So I
Hello.
was saying,
Mm-hmm.
when we go into history of words in psychoanalysis, the history is very strange and repeats over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
The history is this. You start off with a word which denotes a pathological situation. After some years, you say, even in normal population, this is found. And after few more years, you say, there is also a healthy version of this. So from pathological to normal to healthy, the journey of most important words in psychoanalysis has been so. Same is true of narcissism. It started off as something when Freud defined it. Then it got developed and people found in normal population also you have it. And then people like Kohut said there is also a healthy version of it. And this journey is very interesting. So let us start with Freud's work on this. Freud's paper of 1914 titled On Narcissism, an Introduction. So how did Freud start with it? Freud started with it in two ways. He defined two forms of narcissism: primary narcissism and secondary narcissism. And usually what we call narcissism is actually secondary narcissism. So when we say something without any qualification, we usually mean secondary narcissism. So let us look at what Freud said about it, and then we'll slowly enter into topic and go into what others have to say about it, and what is the state of reflection on this subject today. Freud started with the concept of libido getting invested in self rather than objects. So the normal movement of the mind is that the mental energy or libido, as Freud called it, psychic energy, is invested into objects of desire or objects of interest. It's always something other than us into which we invest something. We may do it for our own sake, but our own sake is satisfied by investing in some object other than us. In case of narcissism, Freud said, there is a kind of inversion of flow of that psychic energy. Instead of it going into an object, it is invested into the self. So he defined the condition of narcissism as inversion of investment of libido. That instead of psychic energy invested in objects, it gets invested in the self, and therefore the self becomes grandiose. It gets inflated, and the inflation of the self is because of over-investment of libidinal energy. Now the question comes, why should this happen? And what are the various ways in which this can happen? So Freud found out two ways in which this can happen. The first he found out was much deeper, which he did not develop, which I think he should have developed. The first part is what he calls primary narcissism. Freud says that when we talk of the oral, anal, and the phallic stage, the first part of the oral stage, actually, we should not be calling that an oral stage. We should be calling that a stage of primary narcissism. So if you really go by Freud's developmental sequence, we would have a stage of primary narcissism, then oral stage, then anal stage, and then phallic stage, and then genital stage, and then adulthood. So the first stage of psychic development is that of primary narcissism. What is that state? That is a state which is pre-object. It's very, very important. It's pre-object, meaning the child experiences an oceanic oneness. There is no I and not I. That has not yet happened. There is no I and not I. And if this is not differentiated, the question of object does not appear. Neither a separate human being nor a separate inanimate object. So there is no other. It's only one. It's only oneself and no other. And this is Freud's finding or argument that in this state of oceanic oneness, one feels safety, one feels a kind of bliss, and one feels omnipotence. And this state, in a way, is intoxicating. But very soon, the natural process and sequence that sets in, and the mind starts development of a process whereby I and not I is separated, and one enters into the object world. And the moment one enters into an object world, a new kind of life starts. So for Freud, the stage of primary narcissism is a stage. It is not a state, it is a stage. Meaning there is a fixed duration of time which every infant has to pass through, and all infants experience primary narcissism, the state of oceanic oneness. Now Freud says, this is one way that we experience narcissism. That it's only me and me alone and no one else. So this is a state of primary narcissism. So one way we experience narcissism is there is no other apart from us. We are self-sufficient, self-contained, and oceanic and omnipotent. And we experience bliss, and everything happens as we want automatically. It's almost like a omnipotent version of an intrauterine state. So this, Freud says, is one sort of narcissism called primary narcissism, in which the other has no part to play. It is a pre-object world. It is a pre-I not I world. Often we see psychosis with negative features. That is one of the areas where there is a regression to primary narcissism. That slowly one gives up investment in all the objects and starts withdrawing bit by bit. All the investment made into the objects is slowly withdrawn. And the more it is withdrawn, the more negative features we see. What we call avolition is actually a regression to the state of primary narcissism. Yes, please.
Is that why it is called autistic stage also?
Yeah. So Margaret Mahler, commenting on the same period, called it autistic stage.
Okay.
So in Margaret Mahler, the same period, Margaret Mahler divides it into the autistic phase, the symbiotic phase.
Symbiotic psychosis.
Yeah. And then the separation phase, the separation individuation process.
Yes, sir.
So her developmental cycle is in those terms. But many things which are there in the autistic phase are, they appear almost a rewording of the primary narcissism. Now this is primary narcissism. Secondary narcissism is a post-object stage. Not a stage, it is a state. Secondary narcissism happens when the child goes out to attach to the mother or the father and is frustrated. The other person refuses to acknowledge or reciprocate. And therefore, the libido which is going out to attach is frustrated. It results in unbearable pain, rejection. And therefore, out of that frustration, the libido comes back and reattaches onto oneself. The mind comes to a conclusion that entering into relationships is extremely painful, frustrating. It produces states of sadness, helplessness, irritation, anger, humiliation, shame. And therefore, never do it again. Once bitten, twice shy. So the schema is developed not to be dependent on anybody and believe that one is self-sufficient, and not to go into real intense relationships. So one goes into management of acquaintances rather than a real emotional relationship. There is no spontaneous, genuine emotional relationships. One is managing a network of acquaintances for one's own self-interest. And this is what leads to secondary narcissism. That one has entered a post-object stage. One has entered the object state and decided to attach to somebody, got frustrated, rejected, attacked, whatever. It was very painful to bear that. And the mind decided never again. And
So
that,
what? Sorry. Madam wants to ask something.
So does that mean in primary narcissism, no good object is internalized?
No, there is only self as the only object.
So when we see both at play, the primary narcissism, somebody regressing to primary state, or the secondary narcissism, how we would be able to distinguish them externally?
Good question. First, let me answer what you said. The first question was a very interesting question. The moment we use the word internalization, it means that an object exists apart from us that we are trying to internalize. Now, when you are in a pre-object state, there is no other than the one. And therefore, there is nothing other than the one to really internalize. So to feel that kind of state, we have to imagine a unified gestalt. It is one sphere in which we find ourselves. And we identify with that sphere. There is nothing other. There is no question of me and the sphere. I am the sphere. And in that sphere, everything can happen. Now, Freud talks only about the positive things that happen. But in that pre-object state, very difficult negative fantasies also can happen. Because remember, this conceptualization is very early. Freud has not yet come to life and death instinct. Now, if you bring life and death instinct into this concept, then it is feasible that alternately both will activate at some point. So if there is a bliss of omnipotence, there also will be terror of absolute helplessness when the death instinct activates, because there is nowhere to escape and no one to escape from. If there is an object that is attacking, we can escape the object. But if there is no object, only yourself, an attack happens inside of you, where do you escape? One just has to helplessly feel the undescribable terror of it, just as one feels the undescribable bliss of it. So what Klein talks of very intense split affects, extreme ecstasy and extreme terror, both of them will be felt without the split happening. Because in Freud's conceptualization, the split is not happening because split is an object phenomenon. That you look at omnipotent good breast and bad breast, but they're outside of you. So they are post-primary narcissism, but the effects that you feel in split can also be felt in that spherical oceanic oneness, which Freud does not talk about. So this is one part. Now the second part was, what was your question?
Can I
That
ask him?
how would we externally? I'm so sorry, sir. Please go ahead. Parlikar sir,
No, no.
go ahead.
You please continue. I thought your discussion was over.
So the second part was how we will be able to distinguish in a person who's regressing into narcissism, whether it is primary or secondary, if we see the symptoms.
So secondary narcissism will usually not have withdrawal. Primary narcissism will have withdrawal from the world, what we call avolition. That will be there, number one. Number two, primary narcissism is a more deeper regression than the secondary narcissism. And therefore, the primary narcissism will be more psychotic in nature, whereas secondary narcissism generally will be more neurotic in nature. Third will be the kind of self-sufficiency that you see in primary narcissism will be of a much higher order than the self-sufficiency of the secondary narcissism. Fourth will be the fragility of the primary narcissistic regression usually happens in higher fragility compared to secondary narcissism. Like if the fragility is more, the regression to primary narcissism is more probable. Fifth, in many situations, we see part regression to both or part existence of both. That there is a part existence of features of primary narcissism and also secondary narcissism. So there we have to look at the proportion of the primary. Because if the proportion of the primary is high, the prognosis usually is bad. In terms of healing, okay, one more thing. In some of the primary narcissism situations, you will see a strange happiness along with suffering, that you can see that orgasmic bliss on the face, which is very different from the mask-like face. The mask-like face of psychosis, in which also some withdrawal can take place, a volition can be there, is very different from a volition happening because of regression to primary narcissism, where you will see a kind of orgasmic bliss and shine on the face.
So,
7.
in schizotypals, this is usually primary narcissism at play.
Correct. Some part will be there definitely, because primary narcissism is more likely to be strongly found in the chapter on psychosis rather than in the chapter on personality disorder.
Personality disorders.
So in personality disorder, the way it will be found is that there will be a continuum, a digital continuum of ecstasy and torture. That whenever you give work or any responsibility, it felt like torture. And the moment the work is over, one experiences a relief, exhilaration. Yes, gaya. So that exhilaration and torture, the moment you give work, catastrophic thinking starts. It is felt like a state of torture. And one does not want to do the best. One wants to quickly finish as quickly as possible and get done with it. So one can get out of the state of torture into a state of bliss. So this is something that we find in the chapter on personality disorders, which has this bliss part of primary narcissism. So that part is bliss torture dichotomy is primary narcissism in personality disorders.
Okay.
7th part is, it is more difficult to get a person of primary narcissism into therapy than secondary narcissism. Usually they come in because somebody else asks them to, they won't. And the failure in therapy is very high in primary narcissism. Failure in the sense, you just don't continue. The person stops therapy after a few sessions because you are asking him to accept reality, which is 60-40. 60% happy and 40% troublesome. And he is in a state of 100% happiness at times. So it is like you are giving him a packet of chocolate and asking him to give up his sweet shop. Now, why will he renounce a sweet shop for a packet of biscuits? It's a loss-making business in libidinal terms. So these are the differences between primary and secondary.
Sir, you said primary is a stage, whereas secondary is a state. I'm not sure I followed that.
Okay. So stage means a duration. Like oral state is 0 to 2 years. It's a stage. But if you talk of Klein split is a state. It can happen anytime in your life and anytime it can close. But oral stage will happen only in 0 to 2 years. It will not happen 12 to 14. But split can happen 12 to 14, 52, 54, anytime it can happen. So the split open is a state. It is not a stage. In stage, what happens is, once you overcome it, once you go through it, it will never happen again. One may be fixated in it, but that phenomena will never happen again. So stage is a fixed developmental duration. Yes, please.
But a person can regress into the stage, no?
Correct.
Later on.
Correct. Correct. One regresses into the stage. One can be fixated into the stage, but the stage technically is over.
Okay.
Whereas state means it can happen anytime in life. So primary narcissism is a stage that before the oral stage, it is there. It is fixed. Like childhood cannot happen after young age. It is fixed in duration in a sequence chronological thing. So the start is clear, the end is clear, the placement in the developmental process is clear. So that is a stage versus state. So primary narcissism is like a stage, whereas secondary narcissism is more like a normal pathology, or you can call it a state if it's a short-lived thing.
And what is the split in that stage?
According to Klein, so when we talk of any psychoanalytic phenomena, whether it is narcissism or depression or anxiety or anything, one talks about what is the definition of it, what are the causes of it, and how to heal it. These are three important, the Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh of everything.
Yes.
What is it? Number one. Number two, what is the cause of it? And number three, how to heal it. So, on all the three, different schools in psychoanalysis have different things to say. So, what is narcissism? It has many definitions. We'll come to it.
Okay.
What is narcissism? Right? Like Freud has one definition, that libido gets invested in the self rather than the objects.
Yes.
That is one definition. Client will say it is identification of the self object with omnipotent all good object. That the split is open. On one side is the positive end, the negative end. On the positive end is the omnipotent all good object. And the self identifies with this. One becomes one. And therefore the grandiosity. Therefore the illusion of completeness. So every person has a different take on what is it, what is narcissism, what are the causes, and how to heal. So even in the case of what is narcissism, there are two parts. What is the definition of it? And second, how is it manifested? So we'll have a look at it. Yes. Now, on this topic.
Sir, one more question there. This is just a probability of this curious mind I'm thinking about. If, according to Klein, if there is a identification with all good, that is narcissism. Is there a probability identification with all bad? If at all, is it negative narcissism?
It's a very interesting question.
Because in society we see certain people, though we count them as psychopaths or someone who's very devilish, evilish, but they have this grandiose self. Is it because Freud can explain it is driven with that instinct? But when it comes to Kleinian concept, is it that it is on the other side of the spectrum, but it is narcissism?
There are many implicit terms involved in this situation.
Yes. But for safe, we just see the two dichotomies of the split being open.
Correct. So first we have to clarify client's good and client's bad. And our idea of a moral good and a moral bad, and a helpful good and a damaging bad. So when client talks about the good and the bad, the good is safety and pleasure giving, and the bad is attacking and a threat to survival. So the moment you define bad as such, you only have to save yourself from the bad. You can't identify.
But like in cases, like in movies, they show somebody was subjected to very big trauma. Somebody had actually, killed the whole family, and that child in that trauma, now that child becomes a villain, picks up the same identity and becomes equally, destructive. Their Kleinian concept of identifying with all bad object comes into role play. But will it be right to be saying that it is the negative spectrum of the narcissism which the child or the individual has adapted to? Is there anything like negative narcissism?
We will see the typology of narcissism.
Okay.
So when we see the typology of narcissism, and 7 different people have given 7 different typologies. Okay, how can you subdivide narcissists further? It is like when somebody studies narcissistic personality disorder for the first time, right? He spends about 6 months to learn how to identify somebody with NPD.
True, sir.
But when you go deeper into narcissistic personality disorder, then you go into super specialization. Then you open up what are the different types of narcissistic people.
Yes.
Like all the symptoms given in DSM, right? How do they combine in various combinations to produce different groups of narcissistic people? So when you go there, you will see idealistic narcissists and manipulative, exploitative, or pathological narcissists.
Pathological narcissism.
But your original question was even more interesting because that is where the confusion of good and bad is created in the Kleinian language.
Right.
Because the Kleinian good and bad is not the moral good and bad.
Okay.
Kleinian good and bad is the good, the bad is what threatens survival and is torturous. So there are 2 things with the associated with the bad: death and torture. So regardless of how morally good or evil a narcissist is, he will always, in that sense, try to be away from the bad breast. Now, what happens is, while he is identified with the omnipotent all good breast, he does not become all good. He does not really become omnipotent, but he believes he is omnipotent.
It's a perception.
Which means the narcissist, regardless of whether he is morally good or evil, will still be on the positive side of the split. And in the positive side of the split, you will then have to divide that into 5 branches from the positive end to look at all the types of narcissists. Are you getting it?
Yes, sir.
That all human beings, not only narcissists, all human beings will try to save themselves from the bad object, regardless of how unethical they are. Because this good and bad is not moral good and bad. It is the threat to life and threat of torture on one hand, and ecstasy and all the goodness of life on the other hand. So it's more like pleasure pain kind of a continuum rather than a good and bad kind of continuum.
Got it.
So there is a difficulty with the Kleinian language.
So thank you for
And
bringing
the
that.
split is seen in which part of the, what do we call it, personality, developing personality, ego? Is it in the split is in the superego? What do we call it? Split is in what? What splits into good and bad? Self or object?
So Klein has not defined the split using Freud's model of the mind. So therefore, she never talks about whether the ego is splitting or superego is splitting or who is involved in what way it's split. What Klein says is she goes into the theory of thinking. And her idea is that Freud's idea of a child is that of a micro man. That we are just a miniaturized versions of the adult person. Like if the adult is 5.5 feet, we are 1 feet. But everything that is there in him is in us. Meaning, if he can walk and run, we can walk and run. If he can think sanely, we can think sanely. But Klein has a different opinion. She says, just as we learn to walk by fumbling and falling down many times, we also learn to think by fumbling many times. So precursor to sane orderly thought is a very confusing state of fantasy. And one of the ways in which the fantasy operates, the epistemological process operates, is that first we learn to think only in terms of extremes, and to bring together two extremes into a balanced, considered, measured, synthetic opinion is actually difficult. That even as adults, if you ask somebody, what do you think about X? It is very easy for a person to say he is very good or very bad, but very difficult for him to say in context ABC he is good and DEF he is not good. So realistic integrative thinking is not automatic to our minds. It's effortful, it's deliberate and painful, and calls for some capacity. This realistic integrative thinking is actually an acquisition of a later stage. So initially we think in terms of extremes, and therefore the split is how it operates. That we can't think of a breast which also gives and also withholds, which is present and also absent. We can think only in extremes initially. And it is in the later part of near about 6 to 8 months that we develop the capacity to really bring the two together and stop our extreme thinking and go into a more measured, calibrated, nuanced thinking. So one, Klein does not use the concept or operate the concept using Freud's model of the mind. She brings in the concept as on a continuum of epistemological development. That we start with fantasy and later on we go to realistic thinking. And this permeates even our adult age. That we think between dreaming, we don't dream between thinking. The ground matrix is actually a fantasy. And the foreground in the front, the smaller part, is actually sane logical thinking. And the default is dreaming. You stop thinking logically and you'll automatically dream. You don't have to do anything. To think logically, you have to make an effort. But to dream is far more natural. It's almost a default condition. So that is how Klein puts it. And Klein calls it a state. Whenever there is a stress, one can go from an integrated position, what's he called depressive position, into a split open position. Like today, if I ask you, what do you think about citizens of Pakistan? You may give a more nuanced reply. Like any country, they will have good, bad and ugly. But if a war starts, suddenly the split will open. And people who had closed split will have open split, and now they will think in terms of extremes, and it becomes a battle of annihilation. So any stress can open up an otherwise closed split. And in some cases, the split has never closed in the childhood. We'll go into it when we do Klein, why the split won't close in some cases in the childhood. And in all personality disorders, in many cases of addiction, and definitely in psychosis, the split is open. It just got never closed in the child. So now on this point of primary narcissism, there is a fundamental philosophical and theoretical difference between Freud and Klein. Klein did not believe that there is any stage of human mind which can be object-free. And therefore, her school is called an object relation school. For her, in order for thought to arise and feelings to arise, there has to be an object towards which or related to which they arise. That you don't have thoughts related to nothing. You don't have feelings related to nothing. They are related to something. That something is an object. So for her, an object-free mind is not a possibility. So there is a fundamental difference here between Freud and Klein. So Klein never believed in primary narcissism, because for her, there cannot be an object-free thing. That cognition and affect are aroused only in relation to an object. However, in my own explorations and in many spiritual explorations, we see that we experience an object-free psychic situation. So in Indian spirituality, the state of no thought is central as one of the goals of spiritual movements. And therefore, that state resembles more a state of primary narcissism than an object state. In fact, to be free from the objects is one of the goals of spirituality.
So samadhi is that kind of a state where there is no, you are cognitively not related to anything.
So there
But
are different.
how it is similar to primary narcissism? It can have the flavors of primary narcissism, but that is not primary narcissism.
No, it is not. You are right.
But when it say aham brahmasi, so what does that mean? That is primary narcissism.
So primary narcissism is a pre-ego state, and samadhi is a post-ego state.
That is refinement of primary
Okay.
narcissism.
What happens is ki, like Osho used to say, ki the way to the truth lies only through the false.
Absolutely.
That nobody is born pure and remains pure and becomes enlightened. Everyone has to go through some mistakes, some false paths, and then overcome them to really be pure. So one has to experience a pre-ego state, then one has to experience an ego state, and then one has to go out of the ego state to experience those spiritual states. So samadhi is a post-ego state, not a pre-ego state of like primary narcissism. Yeah.
I remember one figure, perhaps in Sudhir Kakkar's book, that it is like a normal curve, and the indicator closer to zero on y-axis is like in a catatonic negative state, whereas in samadhi it is at the zero on y-axis, but much higher advanced on the x-axis.
Correct.
Like you said, the consciousness, and then beyond consciousness, transcending the consciousness and experiencing oneness. Though experiencing oneness is not always regressive and bad, but it could be unio mystica, as they
Correct.
mentioned.
Correct. So one should not confuse spiritual states with primary narcissism. One is infantile, and second is a great acquisition of self-development. Second, the state of primary narcissism is beyond one's control. It is thrust upon oneself by nature. Whereas the state of samadhi is achieved after a lot of self-developmental efforts. And there is a mastery of going in and coming out of the state. Third aspect of it, the word samadhi is also variously defined. Some can say state of no thought, in which the experience of oceanic oneness is not there. But even that is object-free. You can have state of no thought plus oceanic oneness. And you can have some person getting completely lost in terms of awareness. That also is one more state of samadhi, where the person is completely lost into a psychological state in which neither he experiences oneness nor a state of no thought. He is just lost into a state which is a third state where much of the bodily and mind functions cease. That's a very different description of samadhi. And the fourth description is that one is in a state of no thought with bliss and peace in the background, but one is active in the world. So there are two different names for it. One is, I forget the names.
Asampradnyat.
Some two names are there.
Yeah.
Like one is in the state of withdrawal and one is in the state of engagement. So they are different. Now, in my own explorations, I have seen that one can experience a state of no thought, and one can also experience a state of pure affect, which is not towards any object. That one can experience an object-free pure affect. Like when I was exploring myself, at one point I encountered pure envy, object-free envy. That initially when you explore it, you realize you have envy towards A, B, and C. You work upon it, either it goes or reduces or whatever. And when you go deeper, you realize that there's something like pure envy. And the pure envy cannot stand even good in yourself. Because generally, we define envy as something that its inability to bear good outside of us. And therefore a desire to destroy it. It's unbearable. So unbearability is primary, aggressive attack is secondary. But put together, it's destructive. So we usually define to say, envy is inability to bear goodness outside of us. An interesting point comes, then this is as good as narcissism. Then how do you differentiate narcissism and envy? Because this can easily be one of the features of narcissism.
Narcissism without envy can be the healthy narcissism, so to say, wherein you have pride, hope, optimism, persistence,
Correct.
all positive oral traits.
Correct. But then
Also, but when the split is open, then this is possible that you are being envious about something outside. But if once the split is closed and you're experiencing pure envy,
right. So if you don't experience pure envy, you are not convinced that envy can be attacking even to goodness inside of you. That in narcissism will never happen. In narcissism, you won't attack goodness in you. That is where we realize that envy is not a feature of narcissism, it's an independent feature. And this also leads to Klein's idea of aggression being deflection of death instinct. That what Klein says is that after birth, pure affects, they come towards us. And in order to deflect them, we need an object towards whom they can be deflected.
yes.
Because these difficult affects like envy, aggression, destruction, death instinct, they all come to us unless there is an object to which they can be deflected. And this deflection of death instinct is often seen as aggression. Yes, you were saying something, sir.
It sounds something like नजर उतारणं.
कैसे?
दृष्ट काढायची तर स्वतःची स्वतःला पण दृष्ट लागू शकते.
Oh, correct.
आल्या गेल्याची, भूताखेताची, शेजाऱ्याची, अमक्याची, तमक्याची, माझी माझी माझी, स्वतःची पण.
Exactly. So that is where the envy comes in. का स्वतःची नजर स्वतःला लागते.
Yeah.
That is exactly the operation of pure envy. That can never happen in narcissism. So there is a possibility of pure affect. There is a possibility of an object-free state. However, the Kleinians don't accept it. That. And I mean, they don't accept definitely object-free world. Pure affect, they would conceptually accept that at its origin you can have pure affect, but they would say within a few microseconds an object will be created towards whom it is deflected.
So Klein doesn't give us the concept of oceanic bliss, like before even the breast appears
No.
in the womb. No, okay, she talks about the state, not the stage.
And always involving objects.
Objects. Object relational theory. Okay.
So Klein, Bion, they are object relations theory people. Menzer, they are all object relations. Winnicott and Kohut are supposed to be soft object relations. So they are classified as soft object relation theories, not as hard as Klein and Bion. So primary narcissism is more associated with negative symptoms of psychosis, often associated with happy withdrawal. Regression in pathology can happen to both types simultaneously. Narcissistic personality disorder also can involve both types together or only secondary. In fact, it's difficult to find a schizophrenic case without any personality disorder. Because it's almost like the train is going in reverse from a healthy state to personality disorder to psychosis. So this has to be crossed at some point. You don't reach Bombay from Ahmedabad without Baroda. So Freud
Progressive teleological regression. Sorry. In
Please go ahead.
American Handbook of Psychiatry, they said, very old book I'm remembering from before 80s. Progressive teleological regression takes place during schizophrenia.
Correct. Correct.
What's the
So,
word, sir? Theological.
Teleology.
Teleo.
T-E-L-E. Yeah.
Teleo.
T-E-L-E-O.
So there are
That's
two terms in philosophy which are also taken up in metapsychology of psychoanalysis: ontology, teleology,
Ontology,
and teleology.
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 What is this teleology?
Ontology is the study of origins,
Mhm.
and teleology is the study of goals.
Oh, okay.
Right? Freud is right. Freud is strongly ontological. He is more interested in the origins. And Jung is strongly teleological. He's more interested in the goals. So if you take a pathology to Freud, he will look back in the childhood and say, what happened there that you have this problem? If you take the same patient to Jung, he will say, where do you want to go and how is this stopping you?
I usually feel Freud is always regressing in the therapy, and Jung is always progressing in the therapy, just in the nature of the flow.
Correct. So, yeah, please.
An opposite view to put, if you don't mind,
Yeah, please go.
that those who feel defensive about hiding things in the past, they say, oh, don't look back, don't look back. Project, where do you want to go?
And
That is
true.
that.
That is true.
And I was that it's unrelated. I was wondering if this teleology is it also related to in pedophilia and various paraphilias, there is some term known as teleophilia, which means adults, you have sexual attraction toward adults.
Towards
T-E-L-E-I, adults,
adults.
healthy adults. Yeah. Pedophilia, hebephilia, ephebophilia, and then teleophilia.
Okay.
So
So,
I thought this is the same.
yeah. So what you said, there is a substance of truth in it. That many people who indulge in Freud versus Jung debate and strongly take Jung's position and fight Freud, in many of them, there is a fear of looking back. So often the hatred for Freud and liking for Jung is often rooted as a defensive action. The approach, however, is different in healing. Like for Freud, work has to be done at the point of origin. And for Jung, work has to be done in the present to remove obstacle to further journey. Now, that is not actually independent of what Freud said, but Jung tried to make it that way. In fact, in many cases, in most chronic cases, the obstacle to the present are definitely in the past. So there is no way you can actually avoid early childhood. One of the reasons why Jung dispensed with the couch and came to face was because he was not comfortable with regression that the couch was causing. Whereas for Freud, that was the real ground to work. So Freud here also talks about three important things. That when he says narcissism is overinvestment of libido in the ego compared to the object, meaning there is a kind of zero-sum game. That there is a finite amount of libido and a part of it is supposed to be into the objects for a healthy operation. And because of some unfortunate situation, that does not take place and it gets over-invested into the ego. So there has to be a balance between ego libido and object libido. That if there is a finite libido, a part of it is invested in ego, part of it in objects. A healthy balance is necessary. But when overinvestment in ego happens, the hydraulic balance is, it goes pathological. And that is what leads to narcissism. So it's a very hydraulic expression of narcissism. Paul Nake, 1899, wrote a paper on autoeroticism. And Freud liked it and he took part of it.
There's a typo here. Oro, it has become. It
Oh,
should
sorry.
be auto.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oro can refer to Sri Aurobindo, but let us
Or,
not go
or
into my
it can
analysis.
refer to the ear. There is some story, mythical story of somebody being born from the ear of the elephant, Kanifnath.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Paul Nake wrote a paper on autoeroticism. How small children can treat their own bodies as objects of erotic sensation. Like the sheer act of touching themselves is arousing. And Freud said this is a very good example of libido invested in oneself. And this becomes one of the definitions of narcissism, that it is a form of autoeroticism, which we will see later. One of the definitions, not the only definition. In the beginning of the chapter, Freud also talks about, he starts theorizing about narcissism. He brings in autoeroticism and he also brings in homosexuality. That in homosexuality also, the investment is far more in somebody like oneself rather than someone unlike oneself. And that like oneself actually is a transfer from oneself. So he saw from a libidinal theory point of view, some commonality between homosexuality in terms of the libido transfer and narcissism. That not that the two are same. I mean, a narcissist can be homosexual or heterosexual, but the energy transfer dynamics are similar. Yes, sir, you were saying something.
But I believe this somehow, this is just a doubt I can comment, but eroticism in itself means you are investing somewhere outside of yourself. One is progressing. What I meant to say was one is progressing in the development of the personality, whatever character development. That is the right word.
Correct. So one moves from auto to adult eroticism. And in between are the component instincts operating, right, independently. So from auto to object world, from autoeroticism to object eroticism. And object eroticism originally is within the component instinct world, which are operating independently. And later on, under the genital organization, all of them come together. So auto to object to adult, to line of eroticism. Then Freud enters into for a couple of pages, a discussion into life energy versus libido. Because by then Jung had published something where he said Freud's use of the word libido is not correct. We should use the word life energy. And Freud wants to disprove how libido is a better term. So he devotes almost 1 to 2 pages to that discussion. How Jung is wrong and how I am right, kind of. So he brings in work of 2-3 different people to say that the primary energy, which is psychic energy, is actually erotic. It is not flavor-free. That the primary psychic energy is erotic, and the erotic energy undergoes sublimations and transformations to become something else. But Jung had the idea of life energy. That life energy is like this transparent energy. And whenever one uses it for any purpose, it's like you put a drop of color in a bucket of water and the whole bucket becomes of that color. So when the life energy is at the service of knowledge, it acquires a different flavor. When it is used for sexual purposes, a different flavor. When it is used for spiritual purposes, different flavor. It's like life energy goes into different chakras and each chakra has a color. And life energy there, as it passes through that chakra, on the output side, we see of that color.
So Freud's concept was very close to Tantra's concept of seeing this life energy. Tantra also explains it as libido, which transforms and transcends in various stages and states of life.
Uh, Partly, yes.
Partly.
Because the idea of prana is more nearer to life energy concept.
That is a translation. But when you read the concept, it sounds more like libido, that it is very erotic in nature.
Yes, but the idea there is that the bottom 2 chakras are very strong and they consume a lot of prana.
Mm. Mm.
And therefore, quite a quantity of prana is actually entangled with the bottom 2 chakras.
Mm.
And when you enter into the transformational process, that energy, which seems to be libidinal or aggressive, I mean, to use Freud's word, libidinal, because at this stage, he's covering both aggression and pleasure, both with libido. So in that case, whenever we are focusing on the bottom 2 or 3 chakras and transforming them, it appears like what Freud says, libidinal energy is transformed into something better. But if you look on the other side of the chakra, that how the bottom chakras are getting their energy from, and where at the input of that part, what is the nature of that energy? So at the input of the chakra, it is more like prana.
Okay.
Now there is a more twist here. This is what we call the free energy. Now there is an idea of condensed energy in potential form called kundalini. Now that's a more potential condensed form of it. Now that almost is like this free flowing energy is condensed into something almost like a golden energy. A colorless thing is condensed into gold. And that is a very potent, high potent kind of a potential energy, which is neither the ordinary life energy nor libido.
But in practices like Osho's Tantra practice, not the real Tantra, they talk about if you explore your sexual energy, that is again libido he's referring to, and you transcend that state of, indulging into this and maintaining celibacy or different ways, that only transforms into Kundalini. So that is why I'm asking, is it that the same damn libido which is, progressing upward and so how can that be wrong? I think Freud was pretty right.
No, the uh, Osho's thing was that uh, you can transform the libidinal energy into bliss, and that would be like a transformational thing to happen.
If you're not fixated, if the libido is not fixated into any of the stages, if we mix the both the framework, Freudian and Tantra, and we draw a parallel, if it is not fixated in oral stage or anal, and not at all you are transforming and transcending all those stages healthy way mein, then there is a bigger possibility of you awakening your Kundalini.
Correct. So let's get back to the basics. In a fundamental sense, what would any spiritual process involve? If you translate in tantric terms, it will be that all the chakras are purified and energy from the bottom chakra can move straight to the sahasrara.
But even in a normal context where not all the chakras are purified, people are still very normal and still they have this Kundalini awakening.
Correct. So that brings us into a very different situation, because then we are talking about two different things. One, the Kundalini from the bottom chakra goes to the top chakra because all the chakras are purified. And that experience is in bliss. That is what we call Kundalini awakening. That the energy from the bottom chakra is going to the top, number one. Number two, when this kind of purification in chakras happens, a part of the potential energy also activates. It's not only the normal energy trapped in the chakras, but an extra energy which goes up. This is one situation. Second situation is where a temporary deactivation happens of chakras.
Okay.
So when you say one experiences a state of no thought or a state of bliss or a state of oneness with existence, let us say somebody experiences it for about 15-20 minutes and then comes back.
Satori.
Yeah. And after coming back, the effect continues for some time, where he appears very spiritual and good. And after some time, he forgets it and he becomes more and more like a normal person. So there what has happened is, there is a temporary deactivation of chakras and the energy is able to move up.
Oh.
It is not transformation, it is deactivation.
Okay. It's not transcending the chakras, it is deactivation.
Deactivation. And that is where, if you look at Sri Aurobindo's system, that after experiencing oneness with existence, one has to work on transforming all the chakras. Because it is not necessary that in that experience everything has been transformed. So you can have those heightened experiences and yet have some chakras untransformed. That is where the scandals happen. that some parts of the being are untransformed and non-normal experiences have happened. So there is a temporary deactivation. It's almost like, think of energy as, let us say, something like an iron moving from bottom to up, and each chakra like a magnet. That the iron is moving up and the magnet takes it.
Engages with it.
And the magnetic power is because of desires and fears. The more desires and fears are in each chakra, the more energy will be sucked into it. So when inside the desire and fear goes away, the energy will no longer go in, it will just bypass it. There's nothing to attract that energy. So when there are desires and fears, but temporarily deactivated, then the energy moves as though this is not there. But very soon, because inside it is there, it is not there. After some time, it will open up, and that is how you see many people who are experiencing bliss. Even Osho, when he was experiencing that bliss, you can see his photograph, and he actually looks real. But that was not 24/7, 365, because the chakras were not completely transformed. So those are two different parts. Now, if you come on the input side of the chakra, then we see a different picture.
Mm. Mm.
On the input, you have pure prana taken in by the each chakra. It becomes of a different color and flavor. That when you transform, obviously the chakra is purified to some extent, and you transform that flavor into a blissful flavor. So there is an alchemy of transformation.
Like a purification of pranas.
Correct. So just as Osho says, you can transform sexual energy. In fact, you can transform energy from every chakra. You can transform your energy of the power chakra, even the love chakra, heart chakra, even the throat chakra. So you have to do the same thing in every chakra. What he is saying, Sambhoksa Samadhi, that you have to do in every chakra.
Lovely.
That is where the transformation of personality will really happen at a very fundamental level. And people say that just as this process proceeds, new powers, new insights, new access to different parts of reality also happens.
Absolutely.
Should we break for a cup of tea? I thought I will finish the whole thing today, but I think it will take 2 or 3 sessions. It's long.
Sir, you
But
have
this is
Antu
nice.
cutlet.
Sorry?
You have Antu cutlet.
But I'm very happy for questions both of you have brought in. Extremely good questions. I really like it.
We don't want to bypass any chakra. No foul play. We will go through proper channel. In fact, I was thinking of sharing something I read, watched on the podcast yesterday from Feynman.
Please,
And
please do.
perhaps Feynman. I will share it.
Okay.
Electricity and magnetism, how they are not separate, how do they become temporarily separate, what light does to the 90 degrees this thing. That's what you were telling. That was fascinating. How people make frauds and scams and therefore get caught up. So Muladhara chakra, Swadhisthana chakra, then
Manipur,
Nabi,
Manipur,
Manipur,
Manipur, Anahat, Vishuddhi, Agnya, and Sahasra.
Sahasrara.
So these are
Thank
7
you.
main. The next minor total is about 114. And even more deeper, if you go, like if you go in really the detailed texts of Tantra, then you will have something even probably more than 250 kind of micro chakras.
I recently read the 7 chakras, but down below there are 2 more outside the body.
Correct.
Below root chakra, there are 2 more. I was like, oh my God. Of course, there has to be.
So in Sri Aurobindo's system, that is subconscient and the inconscient. And similarly, there are two outs above the head.
That I was aware of.
And the three important are here, between the Agnya and the Sahasrara.
Yes.
And the above the head are related to aura or something?
Yeah, they are the mystical and the spiritual components. So it is believed that you actually work on 112, and when they are transformed, the last two automatically get transformed. That is the belief. And that is how the mantra system also is designed. That when you have to siddha a mantra, usually you do 112 multiplied by 1000. That on each chakra there should be 1000 times attack of that mantra. So 112 chakras multiplied by 1000, and then if you make some mistakes, so what you do is you add 50 malas for mistakes. So they will say when you do a mantra, you should do 1250 malas of
Sawal.
Sawa lakh, around.
हाँ, that's what it is. 1.25 का जाप करना है.
Actually, it will something like 1,15,000, but colloquially people say Sawa lakh.
Yeah.
That kind of.
मंत्र 3 लाख पुरस्चरण,
Oh,
3 लाख का पुरस्चरण, और ऋग्वेद संहिता का स्वाहाकार 2 times in his life. So 12 Brahmins from Varanasi, Prayag, and all those places, and they coming and staying in our one-room house, and
Wow.
24-hour yajna going on. They would
Wow.
sleep around the yajna kunda, and we were driven out. So as an adolescent, I would get angry. Now I realize that was nice. Thank you, sir.
That is some yajna.
Yeah,
so 10 minutes, we come back. Have a
please.
cup of- So Freud devotes some space to discussion of life energy versus libido. His idea that the psychic energy is primarily erotic, whereas Jung's idea that life energy per se does not have any flavor, and based upon the purpose it acquires flavor. Freud then goes on in this essay, in this paper, to bring another concept in discussion, the concept of ego ideal. Should we wait for Dr. Paralikar?
I think we can pause and wait for it.
I'm sorry, I'm searching.
So Freud devotes some time to discussion between his idea of libido versus Jung's idea of life energy. Freud then goes to introduce a new concept, the concept of ego ideal. And we should remember that the superego is still not come on the stage. We are looking at Freud's theory development before the superego actually comes into place. So what we see here is, from a primordial soup, if one part of it comes out to become ego, so that the organism can survive by adapting to internal situation and external situation. So at the service of survival, the ego emerges out of the id. Now, a part of the ego becomes an ego ideal. And what it means is, the person imagines how a perfect person can be. And Freud says much of that idea of a perfect person comes from the state of primary narcissism, the stage of primary narcissism. That the idea of primary narcissism, when it is put into a person, it emerges like an ideal person, and the ego transforms one part of itself into an ego ideal, the type of person one would like to be. And Freud says this idea of the perfect person one would like to be has a strong component coming from the stage of primary narcissism. That the omnipotence of that stage is translated in terms of a person, and other inputs from society and parents also come. So inputs come from society, inputs come from parents, and inputs come from the stage of primary narcissism to create this perfect image. Now, this is still pre-superego. The superego is yet to emerge as a distinct concept. But what you see here is that the moment you have the ideal, it is almost implicitly superego has come into existence. That the superego has not come into existence in structural terms, but in functional terms, it has come into existence. In the sense, there is
The
no
foreplay of a superego formation.
correct, because the moment this is like superego has two components, thou shall and thou shall not. Now, thou shall has already come in terms of the ego ideal. And implicit is thou shall not anything other than the ego ideal.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not come out in the form of a taboo. It is still only in the form of a preference. So the implicit in this is that there is a preference towards this, but not a taboo against not this. So the thou shall part of superego has come, but thou shall not has not come. That, according to Freud, will come at the end of the Oedipus complex.
There was some term that I remember was parental imagos.
Correct.
IMAGOES. Imagos. And that was somehow related to the precursor of superego or something?
Yes. Because what happens is that these inward projections are on. The split is open. All sorts of projections are on. And the parents are around us doing certain things and not doing certain things. Being helpful to us or not helpful to us. Being benevolent or not benevolent. Now what happens is the human mind is a very learning mechanism very early in life. So things are taken in. The internalization process is always on. Now what happens is the internalization is based upon what you see. But that is half of the story. The other half of the story is your own inner condition of the split, your own inner condition of processing the input. That also comes in. And the two together creates an image of very early life called the imagos. That these are very early life internalizations where the objective reality is one component, but quite an addition to it is a subjective from inside. Like if the split is open, one may look at the parents as extremely terrifying at times, far more than they actually are. So then the image of the parents that is internalized is far harsher than they actually are, because of the split being open and the outcomes of the split affecting the way you interpret them and internalize them. So those early life imagos are very important. It is like many people believe that if they had very attacking parents, even when they are alone as adults, they fear that if I do X, my parental attack will come. So psychologically, they are always present because they are inside of us. their imagos inside of us are operating. And they act like almost like a sensor on our desire. And therefore, it is very important to be free from the parents. But it's not easy. That's almost 50% of psychoanalysis. That one of the main aims is that to be free from the parents. And here Freud also talks into it that, okay, so we'll go into it slightly later. Now, Freud also says that is it that just the homosexual libido sublimates into ego ideal? And he says no. One, the sublimation may or may not be strong enough. It is not that the coming of ego ideal, the homosexual libido just goes away. So here Freud dumps that argument. Freud then talks about the ego ideal and the group. That the ego ideal of one and the ego ideal of the second and ego ideal of the third, somehow they have to come together to create the ego ideal of the group. Like
What is the first,
society,
second, and the third, sir?
like person one has an ego ideal, person two, person three. Now they form a group, a society. So the
Is it
society,
like a collective idols? Like,
correct. So the collective ego ideal of the group is in some way a weighted average of the ego ideal of members. And slowly we will see as we later go in Freud's work that the superego will slowly come out of the matrix. Some will say it comes out of the ego. Some will say it transforms part of the ego ideal. Different people will say different things, but the superego emergence is still pending. We are still in the pre-superego stage.
what age it would be approximately?
We are pre 4 years.
Yeah, somewhere 2, 3.
Correct. Because the end of Oedipus, so Oedipus will from 4 to 5. So end of Oedipus, we will definitely see superego. And even if we say across the Oedipus, the superego is slowly building up. Even if we make that argument, then at least before 4 years, there would be no superego in Freudian terms.
But when he talks about homosexuality in this stage, in small references, what you're making to, that means anal stage is around
Correct.
and Oedipus has not come into action.
Correct.
This is little, yeah, yeah. Can you just reflect there?
Yeah, that is true. What you're saying is true. That the homosexual libido is still there, not completely sublimated. Which means the autoerotic component is still there, not completely converted into an object libido. That is one. The second is, if we take homosexual libido to be literally homosexual libido, not autoerotic libido, then an important twist and turn happens here.
But auto thing is can be a precursor to the later one, right?
Correct.
That it shows up, then it settles for a while, and then again somewhere in the anal stage, if there is a fixation, and then the Oedipus comes into, then there's a greater chance.
Correct. Correct. Now here, for girls and boys, it will be different. Because for the boy, the moment he moves from auto to object, the object is the mother. So the movement from auto to object is itself heterosexual. But for woman, it will be a two-step process. From auto, it will be a homosexual libido, and from homosexual object libido, and from there to the heterosexual object libido.
Makes sense.
So one of my teachers used to say, that's one of the reasons because the female mind has experienced it once. A lesbian relationship to a woman is not as abhorrent as a homosexual relationship is to a man.
Oh, yeah.
One of my teachers used to say this.
Makes sense.
But
Sir, can I please request you to repeat that? How does the woman has experienced it before?
because the moment you move from auto libido to a object libido, the first object is the mother
Oh, I see. For both the sexes.
for both the sexes. But for
Okay.
one, it is naturally hetero, and the for other is naturally homo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for a boy, the movement from auto to object is very easy. It's naturally hetero. But for woman, there is one more bus stop in between.
Yes.
That this object, it's auto to object, which is homosexual, and then to object, which is heterosexual.
Object loss and settling for a bad object.
Correct. You give up the mother for the father.
No, you can't shun all the father figures as bad objects, nahi ka?
Of course
She's
not. But giving up
you
onto
are
the
being
first giving up onto the
discriminatory.
my
Yeah.
bad.
So
What I wanted to say was, uh, um, father-daughter incest is less pathological as compared to mother-son incest. That is
yes,
what I remember.
correct.
Uh-huh. Can we discuss it here or is it irrelevant? We can touch it later somewhere.
We did it last time.
No, father-daughter versus mother-son.
When we discussed totem and taboo,
Yeah.
we said in tribal areas, each tribe has a totem, a symbol that they hold as sacred.
Yeah.
And we said, whoever worships that totem, they are not supposed to marry each other.
Yeah.
It's like a gotra.
Barbare.
Now, the matrilineal lineage comes in. That if boy of totem A marries a girl of totem B, then what will be the totem of the children? So we said, okay, many tribes follow matrilineal lineage, which means if both the children will be totem B.
Yeah.
Now, totem B cannot have sexual relations with each other. So the mother-son incest is prohibited, but the father-daughter incest is not prohibited.
Oh.
So as Freud says, originally the passing of the totem was in a matrilineal lineage. Because the earlier societies, they feared mother-son incest more than the father-daughter incest. And later on, to plug that loophole also, they brought in more complicated ideas. You can not only not marry your totem, but a few other totems also, to put an end to that father-daughter incest opening.
Thank you.
But her point raises an important idea that the moment you say the homosexual libido is sublimating into an ego ideal, sublimation also implies something being more acceptable and something being less acceptable. So, which would mean operation of some sort of guilt or some sort of utilitarian evaluation. So if Freud does not bring in the idea of utilitarian evaluation, he would have to prepone guilt and free the guilt from Oedipus complex. So this is something that Freud is on a weak wicket, and if he was asked to defend, he would probably bring in a utilitarian argument. Nahi to the theory will have a hole in terms of the occurrence of guilt. Because if you mean by sublimation, okay, you dislike homosexuality and you like ego ideal. Now, if you say it's more utilitarian, it's okay. But if you say homosexuality has to be repressed, that means operation of guilt.
But what if even if the guilt has not come up, if we see parallelly Kleinian thing, guilt is not yet there.
Klein will not have a problem because Klein ka Oedipus is 2.5 years.
Ah. But
Number one.
here, but object loss is so great that the guilt won't come.
So for Klein, this is not a problem because one, Klein believes that guilt is inborn. It does not need any process to appear. And second, her Oedipus is 2.5.
But in Freud also, even if for a girl, I'm talking about in case of a girl has to give up on mother, right? When we are talking about the homosexual component being experienced there, and then going for a heterosexual version of libido satisfaction and gratification, and then Oedipus hits.
It is called electrum.
Electra complex.
Uh-huh.
So there are two jumps
Correct.
for the female. So what is first jump generating if not guilt? It is
Uh,
pure sublimation कि भैया change the person because this is more complex. Or probably Electra complex came into role play, but there was nothing like Electra.
the first one, the if you talk in terms of the loss line, the line of losses, the first loss is the loss of the oceanic safety.
Ah,
As you
that's
move from the oceanic oneness into an object state, because
ah.
that means a sense of fragmentation.
Mhm.
Okay, we feel as if we were once a part of a huge oceanic reality and we have been shred out of it, and now we are left lonely. That once we were an organic part of an organic whole, and now we are in a subject object relationship. And the subject object relationship is fundamentally alienating.
Mhm. So you settle
So,
for whatever is left.
correct. So the moment the first loss and the first alienation is experienced, the moment you go from an oceanic world to an object world, the second loss will be the loss of the mother as the girl moves to the father.
That means this is taking place for girls pretty early
Pre-Oedipal.
than boys.
Pre-Oedipal.
No, but compared to the both the genders, it is occurring prior for girls then in that
Correct.
case.
Correct. The mother loss is much earlier compared to,
Hmm.
because for boys it is Oedipal, for girl it is pre-Oedipal.
It's pre-Oedipal.
Correct.
Did Freud
But
say
then
anything about this loss?
No, Freud did not
Touch
theorize much
this
about loss. It was Klein who theorized much about loss.
object theory. So yeah, she has to.
but then why is the jump from mother to father in case of daughter? At the age of 2.5, you said, no? Oedipus.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Due
So
to Electra complex, there is a shift
Mhm.
to the father figure.
yeah, now that takes us into a more exotic area.
Mhm.
Ki, why should Oedipus happen at all?
Mhm.
Why should the child develop such a liking and have death wish towards the other?
Mhm.
And the same logic will apply here also. Ki, why should the child move from oceanic state to the object stage? Why
Mhm.
should a girl move from a female object to a male object? So Freud will only say that that is the way our genetic structure is. And we are supposed to undergo these developmental processes. And Jung will say that is how age appropriate our archetypes fire and activate or deactivate. And below the archetype activating, deactivating is our genetic structure.
What if there is no, these theories are not there and we see it, that alienation from the oceanic bliss never happened, rather you merge into your mother and that is why you want the father, rather you separating from your mother, you're merging into your mother and you identify yourself as mother, hence the father.
Correct. The issue will be why boys would do it differently.
Because they cannot identify with mother,
So then the question will be why.
because the precursor of this genetic, yeah, this only, because the female can identify with the female.
Correct.
Male cannot identify with the male, will identify with father, but he has to, it is the, if we forget all these theories, if they're not existing and we are seeing it for the first time, can it be something like that? That there is mother, there is a child. Child A is son. Now he cannot identify with mother, so he has to go through this alienation and then go to the father. That becomes the line of homosexuality because there is an identification with the father, not with the mother.
There is a
Case B of that of a girl child. Now you get it. What if it is like this? If
so
this
there
is
are
not like this and this, it is how it is?
okay. So three explanations possible. One is it's completely genetic. That is one.
Hmm. Hmm.
Second, you say it is genetic, but the way the genes express that involves this phenomena
Hmm.
that in case of a girl, the identification with the mother happens and therefore the shift to the father. In case of boy, the identification with the woman does not happen.
Hmm.
That is second explanation, where it is still genetic, but involving a process of identification gender-wise. The third is ki, what if it is driven from the outside? And the way it would be is this: the mothers show more concern for the male child and the father for the female child. And that would be because of the repressed masculine and feminine side in each of them. The daughter is father's favorite and the son is mother's favorite. Now, if that kind of thing is there in early childhood, then one naturally shifts to the one who is showing you to be his favorite.
Yeah. But that happens pretty later. Logically, when you start accepting,
So that
I get that point completely, because father is nowhere in the picture to be seen in the primary days of the child where the only interaction is with the breast. So if we go with the Kleinian, then this concept. But if we go with the Freudian thing, I think there is no identification of who has given you birth. There is primary narcissism. All of a sudden, there is an understanding of an object, and that libido comes into role play. Libido is going to catch hold of the opposite gender. Just a probability. What if? Yeah.
A probable novel explanation.
please go on.
Because of the penis envy and castration anxiety, the children of two genders, they behave differently.
Go on.
Because the daughter realizes that mother also has penis envy.
Hmm, hmm,
So she learns to love the father. Whereas the son is aware that he is wanting mother or retaining mother for himself completely, exclusively, physically as well as
hmm,
sexually.
hmm.
He is going to attack from father, and there will be castration as a punishment. So that castration anxiety models him into being like father and achieving eh, possessing someone like mother.
Hmm,
So that is how Oedipus is a little different in boy and a
hmm.
little delayed, whereas the daughter has intuitively understood it that the mother also has penis envy. So
So
she and as a male superiority is not an anathema to psychoanalysis. There was no equality. In fact, male superiority was there.
pure behavioral will be this, that the boy looks at the father who has a penis and the boy has a penis,
Yeah.
and he learns from the father that
Mhm.
those with penis are supposed to like those without penis,
Mhm.
and he learns from looking at father liking the mother that I should
Mhm.
also like the mother,
Mhm.
and the girl looks at the mother to see that I am without penis, the mother is without penis, and those without penis are supposed to like those with pets.
Yes.
Fair enough. But again, I have a very funny question here. From where the penis come into the picture? It is the damn breast which they would envy, because breast is something they are subjected to every day. They have been put on mercy of breast. Good breast, bad breast happening there, secondary.
Weaning,
So
weaning,
can
madam,
it be the breast envy?
madam, weaning has taken place.
No, I'm talking about this pre-Oedipal stage. Suppose Oedipus
Uh-huh.
complex is not there, sir. And before that, what if these theories don't exist and we see it as a new structure of theory to understand how Freud moved and how things moved in, not taking what Freud has given for a moment. We hold on to that. Let it not be there. Then what, from where the penis come into the picture? Is it the primal scene we are referring to, Freud referring to, from where the penis come into the picture? Or it is why there is no breast involved in this? Why there is no breast envy? Sir, you're on mute, sir. Just a possibility we are exploring.
Because the mother has weaned the child, first child, because the second child is in row and he has won the competition with the older child for the breast.
What about the mothers who only have single child? There also this happens.
It
Correct.
may be a little different and difficult,
Yeah, so
but
let's explore the
usually,
scenario. Yes.
usually, usually the mother has uh, dispatched the first baby.
No, I get it, sir. I'm a big time Freudian fan. I'm just trying to understand when the Freud has not given the concept of Oedipus, and still this thing is happening. What if there is a probability to see it with another lens? What if from where the penis is coming into the picture? Is it the primal scene which inflicts that idea, or it is to why there is no breast envy? Why breast is not the component of Oedipal? What if Oedipus is nothing to do with gender? It is about something which gives you pleasure. Libido is fixated at, and it should be breast. Why penis? It's just a question. I'm just bringing another probability of thought process for myself.
So breast envy is a very strong component in Kleinian theory.
Hmm.
That you are right. In the initial period, the child is interacting only with the breast. In fact, in most early period of life, the child doesn't even know there is a concept of the mother, that the breast is a part of a mother.
Hmm.
He knows only the breast.
Breast.
Stage is called the part object stage,
Hmm.
where the child knows only part object, not that this part is a part of a larger organ.
Object.
So these are part object relationships in Kleinian theory. And when part object relationship stage happens, there is very strong envy towards the breast.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, the second part, how would you like to relate that further? What did you say?
So, if we remove, if we keep the concept of Oedipus not with the penis, rather with breast, now play around the dynamic.
Go on.
So, mother has the breast, none of the children have the breast.
Correct.
Right? They cannot relate with the breast because they don't have it. Neither they can nurture, neither physically also breasts have not developed. Then there is a transition that other than breast, there is something else also, which mother doesn't have.
Hmm.
From there, the penis would come. From where the concept of penis landed in the world of child when father is it coming from the primal scene?
Uh, yes.
In
Either
Freudian's theory.
either from the primal sin or during changing clothes or taking bath or something that of that sort.
Hmm. Hmm. Or yeah, primal scene or the physical exposure.
But as you rightly said, these are all the post-depressive position phenomena. My end.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
And there is also a urethral position in between where the competitiveness is associated with the uh, distance at which one is able to pee. The
Correct.
farther the pee, the stronger
Okay.
the boy.
Okay.
So
that is true even in the school washrooms.
yes, sir.
People compete.
Yeah.
Who is more manly, kind of.
Yes. I'm sorry if it is a distraction, but I'm seeing a patient right now, currently, who is suffering from symptoms like Koro. He believes that his penis is very small. He does not say it is shrinking, but he says it is very small. And it took him a number of years. He had been to several doctors before. There he did not express this. And then now he is saying that people are considering me, laughing at me because my penis is small. And um, the self-referential thinking was almost delusional, but the father and the mother both are having high express emotion. And the father actually he actually showed his organ to the son, showing that yours is not small. And in fact, the father has undescended testes. So he shared that with the son. Son is about 20 years old. He was very good academically till 10 and then deteriorated. And now he has left his education after second year, nearly psychotic. He was treated with ECTs and antipsychotics and all that. But as we go on speaking and deconstructing the category, we see the pathology in terms of, oh, it can be explained in neurotic terms.
Correct.
And he does appear much better now, but still he needs that antipsychotic. Yesterday he came and told me he cannot do without the small dose of antipsychotic. I said it's okay. It's very fluid yet. But basically, essentially non-psychotic person having neurotic anxiety, getting labeled as psychotic,
Correct.
and
So,
suffering the consequences. The career as a patient begins.
true.
It is so tragic.
Yes. So this is a classic case where we say there is a neurotic character structure and disorder of psychosis.
Mm. I remember, sir, we discussed in one of our courses.
You can have the disorder may be psychotic or neurotic, and underlying it, the character structure may be psychotic or neurotic, and you have all the four combinations.
Yes.
So this is a very good prognosis that there is an underlying character of neurotic type, and the top episodic presentation is of a psychotic type.
So you're on mute, sir.
Emotion. I'm not on mute, ma'am.
Oh,
Only if the parents are able to control the express emotion, they are very much possessive and controlling. I'm trying to keep them some distance and give some autonomy to the child so that the child can at least prove whether he's psychotic or neurotic.
that itself says a lot about the autonomy of an individual feeling
Yeah,
small,
yeah,
helpless,
absolutely. It's very
very
symbolic.
symbolic.
So analytically, we will say there was some very early life trauma which created huge amount of inferiority. And with this inferiority, the man went into Oedipus and again felt severe rejection and severe shame. And both of them are now manifesting. Behind the difficulty is this penis inferiority. And behind the penis inferiority are two things: the Oedipal penis inferiority, and before that is the pre-Oedipal loss or attack inferiority.
It's a semi-castration.
So what happens is in very early life, he felt intense amount of inferiority and shame. And with this inferiority and shame already felt, he went into the Oedipal stage. And again, he was rejected and he faced very severe object loss of the mother, which was second loss. The first loss was pre-Oedipal, and now the Oedipal loss. So now what happens is, wherever he goes, he experiences the fear of loss or attack. Because pre-Oedipal, what he felt was, one, there was an element of loss which led to inferiority, and there was an attack of shame, both pre-Oedipal. So the line of events here is, first an event of loss leading to inferiority, second an event of shame leading to both inferiority and shame, which is an event of attack leading to both inferiority and shame, inferiority multiplying again, then going to Oedipus and again feeling the inferiority of rejection. The rejection leads to loss, inferiority, and shame. So now we have a person with loss, inferiority, and shame. And shame is entangled with attack. So we have loss, inferiority, attack, and shame. So those
That
are
also translates into the conflict of superego and it where ego is distorted.
yes. It's
With reparative efforts from the father. Father is now actually showing him his own penis and undescended testis. So only one testis in the scrotum. And he says nothing happened wrong in his life. So he's assuring the child that nothing will go wrong with him. So this is also a kind of built-in spontaneous reparative effort from the side of the father.
Mhm, mhm. That shows his Oedipus, father's Oedipus.
But he's transcending that.
Mhm,
And he's not attacking the child anymore, though he continues to be vegetatively aggressive. Not sexually, but vegetatively is insisting that the son should do
mhm.
this and son should do that. And they are staying far away. So they said they can visit me only once a month and not once in 15 days or once in a week. And they are farmers, agrarian family. If possible, I will write this draft up and we will see if we can write this case if it's acceptable to all of you.
Yeah, sure. Can do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So the ego ideal and the superego are the next ones to appear in theory. And uh, so we are nearing time, but uh, okay. So Freud says that narcissism is libido invested in the self. Now he goes into uh, how is the libido invested in the self? How much is it? So one, of course, is what is the amount of frustration, the libido with which one went to an object and came back. That is one measure of how much libido is invested. Second, how much of primary narcissism libido is carried forward onto the self. The third he says is very interesting, degree to which one has been able to reach the ego ideal. So when
I
we
didn't understand the third one, sir.
talk of how much libido is invested in the self in narcissism, two sources are very clear. Some part of primary narcissism, some part of secondary narcissism. Third can be degree to which one has been able to reach the ego ideal.
Mm.
That how much I have been able to reach what I think is perfect state to reach, as much I will love myself. So if
That
my
means superego is there.
not yet in the punitive sense, in the thou shalt,
Oh,
it's not in the thou shall not sense.
right.
So the ego ideal is thou shall. So degree to which I reach the goal I set for myself, so much I love myself. And last is how much one is loved by others. If everyone hates and attacks, it's very difficult to love oneself. One starts doubting oneself. One may start even hating oneself. So Freud says these are the reasons that determine how much of libido is invested into the self.
Till
Look,
when this till when this ego idol remains with us? Forever?
forever.
Oh, then I need to work somewhere there. It's just a personal query I had.
So you change your ego ideals as you grow,
Mm-hmm.
but you always have some ego ideal. Unless one is enlightened,
Of course.
then you become the ego ideal for others. You don't have it.
Others.
Like Donald Trump in yesterday's video.
Correct.
Don't name him.
So we can add to these three Freud's reasons two more of our own. How much one is respected in society and how much power one wields or has access to in society. They are also contributors.
Later.
Yeah.
At this stage, they are not there.
Later it will come. So Freud does not talk about it, but we can add these reasons to it.
This is parallel to current theory about recovery from chronic psychosis. And these are the components of moral agency as described by Neely Myers.
Uh-huh.
So we can actually have culture and psychoanalysis
Okay.
Oh,
combined together. Yeah, this is nice.
another point that Freud brings in is self-esteem, which does not go deeper into. But many people say narcissism essentially as a self-esteem stabilization problem. That everyone is walking on the road. On the side of the road, there is a mountain and a valley. So the narcissist is standing on the top of the mountain, dependent at the bottom of the valley, and the rest of the population is moving on the road. And both of them essentially have a self-esteem stabilization problem at the center. On a 10-point scale, everyone is between 5 to 8. But in case of personality disorders, one gets into a digital scale of 0 and 10. So for the narcissist, he is either 10 out of 10 or 0 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
He cannot accept that realistically all human beings are in 5 to 8 scale. And it's okay to be there. And it's healthy to be there.
Why 0?
Because the person believes that if he is not omnipotent, he is at the bottom of the valley.
Is it not
Feeling
that what I asked about the negative narcissism?
Now, the mechanism will be the dependent and the narcissist and all personality disorder individuals were once walking on the normal road like everybody else.
Hmm.
And then the event of loss or attack happened,
Hmm.
usually loss.
Hmm.
And while they were walking on the road, suddenly they fell into the valley. Now, once everybody was in the valley, it was unbearable there.
Hmm.
Now, different people have different resources to come out of the valley.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, if 10 people fall into the valley and experience loss, 2 of them will jump to the mountain top and become narcissists. 2 of them will remain in the valley and be dependent. And they will, in order to overcome the difficulty of that state, they will identify with a narcissist and share the omnipotence of the narcissist by identification. And the moment the narcissist is gone, the omnipotence is gone, and the unbearable state of the valley activates. So the omnipotent narcissist becomes a stabilizing factor.
Okay.
The
So it's,
histrionic,
and if the narcissist is at 10, then why he succumbs to Oedipus? If the
why?
whole of the libido is, you know, inverted, it's onto oneself,
No,
not
no, no,
outward.
no. It's, 0 and 10 scale is the scale of omnipotence to helplessness.
Okay,
It's not
okay,
libido investment scale.
okay, okay, okay.
Feeling guilty for being born at 0, and I don't need anyone at 10.
Correct.
But theoretically, at least, it is possible that one should be able to come to 5, between 5 and 8, rather than jumping from bottom to the top.
So
It should be possible to,
correct. So usually what we see in therapy is, okay, by and large in personality disorders, people keep jumping from 0 to 10, 10 to 0.
yeah.
Now, how do you come to 5 to 8? That is the whole objective of therapy. Now, the first is to understand this problem and to accept theoretically first, intellectually, that it is healthy to be in 5 to 8 and it's unhealthy to be on the extremes because it's fantasy. Nobody in reality can be 0 or 10. Both are fantastical positions. And the healthy reality is 5 to 8. That is first step. Second step is the valley was created because of loss. It is that void of loss. Now, if the mountain can be turned upside down and fill up the valley, you create a straight road, meaning you undo the loss by internalizing a new object. The problem with personality disorder is that once bitten, twice shy. They refuse to internalize deep enough the object that they lost. But if they could find somebody safe and good enough, they can internalize, then that valley is filled again.
With the therapy, it is possible to trust again, to learn to trust again and enter into societal endeavors.
Correct. So what happens is that in most personality disorders, if the therapy goes on for adequate amount of time, then at least we see improvement between 60 to 75%. Meaning, in our metaphor, the depth of the valley reduces by half and the height of the mountain reduces by half.
True.
But that is for other personality disorders. Narcissists won't come to the therapy only.
Correct.
They love to remain on the top no matter what.
Correct. That is because the moment reality comes to be with them, they are terrified because they know in reality nobody is 10 out of 10. And they fear that anybody who brings reality to them, which means any performance in the real world, because in no performance you can be 10 out of 10. So any performance in the real world is seen as a terrifying challenge because the prospect is you will fall into the well. And it's a high stress job to maintain 10 out of 10. You need huge amount of denial inside of you and huge amount of projection to maintain 10 out of 10.
Sorry,
That
sir.
is the omnipotence which hold on to the inert, effortless state they want to be in.
They are the extreme narcissists. See, like I was seeing somebody and I said that it seems you have a very strong desire to be great. He said, yes, but not the type that I should work hard and get it. It should come looking for it.
Sir, I believe I'm more like neo-Freudians. That is what I would think. I'm thinking like, rather than post-Freudians. Like that, it is possible, yeah. With age and with time, even the bad personality disorders will become milder. Sorry, madam, but I'm saying that everybody can have hope.
True. And that is what the whole therapy is about. We by and large get 60 to 75% results.
Yeah.
The minority is where to go beyond 75% is a minority.
Yeah.
But the quality of life is radically different. I mean, if you can improve 60 to 75%, it's a radical difference.
Yes, sir.
Okay, one more point and we'll stop for the day.
Yes.
Freud talks of two kinds of love: analytic love and narcissistic love. And this is separate from Freud's earlier question, is there anything called love? So in the chapter on transference, Freud talked about, is there anything called love? Meaning, is there anything other than transferential love? That early in life, whatever loves we had towards people, in adult life, are they getting just displaced? Or is it that in adult life, completely new relationships of love ever come into existence? So there Freud was talking about, is there something called real new adult love, or is all adult love only transferential? Here Freud is talking about two different types of love: analytic love and narcissistic love. The child experiences both these types. Analytic love is love towards mother, father, and caregivers. And narcissistic love is love for someone like oneself. Some love towards somebody that we want to become, or oneself itself. Like Narcissus, the extreme, that he doesn't love somebody like him, or somebody he would like to become, or somebody he admires, but himself itself. So this himself itself is pure narcissistic love.
Yeah.
So I think we should stop here and continue next time. Any questions?
A lot of questions, sir, but we'll be taking up in the next session.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Paul, for very good participation and questions. Very good.
Thank you, sir.
I'm losing some of my anxiety to interfere and ask. Thank you.
So good, so good.
I've been an anxious person since.
Sir, you're bringing such amazing questions.
Memorial. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.